Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Well, it is now officially official. Kellen Moore, officially the 19th head coach in New Orleans Saints history. A horribly kept secret over the past 2 weeks. Saints, as we know, trying to do everything by the books, but everyone knew this was ultimately the end game, barring, as it was said many times, some unforeseen roadblock. But here we are, Tuesday afternoon, after reports all morning that it had been done. The New Orleans Saints issued the press release, and Kellen Moore is the new head coach of the New Orleans Saints. We'll start with a reaction to the hire, why I like it, why I don't, what's most important moving forward, all that good stuff. First and foremost, how should we feel about this hire? And not as good as Detroit. I mean, the belle of the ball was Ben Johnson. He was the guy everybody wanted. And he's in Chicago. Left Detroit for Chicago. How do we feel? Not as good as the Jets. The guy you really wanted was Aaron Glenn. He picked the Jets instead of you. You wanted Joe Brady. He decided to stay in Buffalo. You wanted to talk to Cliff Kingsbury. He decided to stay in Washington. So you got far down your list, but it doesn't mean you can't find a winner. It doesn't mean you can't hit on the hire just because it wasn't your first choice. And the Eagles' playoff run does give Kellen Moore a really significant boost, doesn't it? I mean, we were not talking about Kellen Moore at all before Championship Sunday. As a matter of fact, I remember looking at those odds when Joe Brady announced he was staying in Buffalo. There were 7 candidates left on the list, and we were talking about Joe Brady and Mike McCarthy. Anthony Weaver had interviewed. We were talking about Mike Kafka. Kellen Moore was 6th out of the 7 on the list as far as odds. And then they went and hung 55 on the Commanders in the NFC Championship game. Boom. Stock skyrockets. Saints interview him the next day. That's the path they're heading. The last 2 weeks have been a whirlwind. They hang 40 on the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden you feel much better. And you look at Philly this year, 8th in the NFL in total offense, 7th in the NFL in scoring offense, 2nd in the NFL in rushing offense, 29th in passing offense. And that's a passing offense that had its A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You were 29th in the NFL in passing offense. Only 3 teams were worse at throwing the football with all those weapons. Now, a big part of that is because you had a 2,000-yard rusher. But the Eagles this year won with defense and running the football. And I got news for you, Coach. Saquon Barkley ain't coming to New Orleans with Kellen Moore. So they're going to have to do it differently in New Orleans than they did this year in Philadelphia. But I'll tell you there's reasons why I like the hire. From the moment the New Orleans Saints fired Dennis Allen, I sat here and said, my choice is a young, offensive-minded head coach. The NFL is a copycat league. Look at the trends. Go find a young, offensive-minded coach. My preference was off the McVay-Shanahan tree. You didn't get that exactly, but you still got a guy at 36 years old who's the youngest head coach in the NFL now, who, of course, is offensive-minded. Was a great college quarterback at Boise State. We know he won 50. He was 50-3 during his time as the quarterback at Boise State. Came into the NFL, played parts of 7 seasons in the NFL, went right into coaching. Cowboys, Chargers, Eagles, and now the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. You look at the best coaches in the league, Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Nick Sirianni, who just won a Super Bowl. Guys like Matt LaFleur, Jim Harbaugh, offensive-minded coaches. There are exceptions, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Dan Campbell. There's good coaches that aren't offensive-minded coaches, but you can see the trend where the NFL is going. And it's also interesting because he's been an offensive coordinator now at 3 different stops: Dallas, the Chargers, and the Eagles. He had Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts. 3 very different quarterbacks in their skill sets, in their experience, in their styles, and they managed to get going with each of them. Now, there is also legitimate reason to question this. There's obviously the lack of experience. Came into the NFL very young and has rapidly ascended. But, as I just mentioned, we've seen young coaches have great success. During his time in Dallas, they were successful statistically. 4 seasons as the offensive coordinator. He was the play caller, by the way. It was not McCarthy. Moore was the play caller. In 2019, they were 6th in total offense. Then they went to 17th. Then 1st. They led the NFL in total offense in 2021. And then in 2022, they were 3rd. So the lowest he finished was 17th. The other years were 1st, 3rd, and 6th. But last year, again, that was Mike McCarthy's offense, veteran quarterback in Dak. Goes to the Chargers for 1 season. They're 21st in the NFL in total offense. That's with Justin Herbert. Boom, they're fired, and then he's off to Philly. Emmitt Smith, over the past 3 years, has been pretty vocal, Cowboys legend, about his lack of confidence or criticism, I should say, in Kellen Moore. Play number 2, please. This was just a smidge of Emmitt Smith. I believe this was an interview with USA Today. Give a listen.
See, in our past, under Kellen, I think we was just calling damn plays just to be calling plays. I don't think we was building upon anything. There was nothing that established this that made sense to play off of that and then go to here and here. It was just play calling, and every now and then we're going to throw in a little trick play, and the trick play would work sometime, then and sometime it won't. It'd be a wasted play and all that kind of stuff. Losing momentum, gaining momentum, it was just too much.
That's Emmitt Smith. That ain't me saying it. That's Emmitt Smith saying it. You're going to hear the counter to that as well. And clearly, they're pretty good offensively this year in Philadelphia. But ultimately, the sample size will grow and we'll make that determination about his success or failures. But for Kellen Moore, there's 2 really important decisions from jump he's got to make. Number 1 is his defensive coordinator. Because we have just seen this not only in New Orleans, but across the NFL. If you're a head coach that specializes on one side of the ball, you got to nail it on the other side of the ball. Look at Dennis Allen. He retains Pete Carmichael. The defense in New Orleans under Allen, the first year, was still good. The offense was not. We can talk about injuries, but the reality is what it is. Your record, you are what your record says you are. Go back to Sean Payton. When Sean Payton was rolling offensively, great. What did it look like when Steve Spagnuolo and Rob Ryan were the defensive coordinators? You were a sub-500 team with Sean Payton and Drew Brees. You got to nail the other side of the ball. A lot of the scuttlebutt is that Brandon Staley, who was the head coach with the Chargers, who hired Moore in Los Angeles, could be the front runner for that job. We'll see, but you got to nail that hire. The other is, what do you do with Derek Carr? Do the Saints get Kellen Moore, and in so doing promising him that Derek Carr will be back so you have a better chance of success in year 1? Or do they promise patience, saying, look, we're going to move on from Derek Carr, but we're going to give you patience to build this thing the right way with the guy you want under center? I don't know the answer to that. We'll learn in time. But those are the 2 biggest questions Kellen Moore's got to answer first. Who's your DC, and what are you going to do with Derek Carr? You get those answers, we'll have a much better idea of what New Orleans is going to be. But the bottom line is, it does not matter. It does not matter how good of a coach Kellen Moore is, or anybody, if you don't have roster and culture. Look at New England. Bill Belichick is the greatest coach in the history of football. The man won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach. When Tom Brady left, they went 7-9, 10-7, 8-9, 4-13. He's fired. You can literally be the greatest coach of all time, but when you don't have players and culture, you cannot win. So, will Mickey Loomis get out of the way and get this roster younger and more talented? That's the question. Bigger than anything else. Because I don't care if it's Kellen Moore, Bill Belichick, or anybody in between. If this roster doesn't get younger and more talented, nobody can win. Because right now, all you have is a bunch of bad debt from years of buying on credit. You have spent years swiping that credit card, kicking the bill down the road, and all you got to show for it is a bunch of veteran players with no rings that are past their prime that cost you way too much. So what's it going to be, Mick? Are you actually going to give your young head coach a chance, or are you going to allow that mountain of debt to hang around his neck like an albatross destined to drag him to the bottom of the ocean? We'll find out in short order. Kellen Moore, new head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.